Welcome back. Today we uncover the story of World War I, the spark, the battles, and the fall of empires. Let's start the story. The summer of 1914 was bright and peaceful in Europe, but beneath the surface, tensions had been boiling for years. Old rivalries, secret alliances, and the race for power had created a dangerous atmosphere, waiting only for a single spark to ignite a great fire. That spark came on June 28, 1914, in the city of Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, and his wife Sophie arrived in Sarajevo for a state visit. Their presence stirred anger among Serbian nationalists, who believed Bosnia should not be ruled by Austria-Hungary. Among them was a young man named Gavrilo Princip, a member of the secret group known as the Black Hand. That morning, as the royal motorcade moved through the streets, conspirators lined the route. One threw a bomb at the Archduke's car, but it missed and exploded behind them, injuring bystanders. Shaken but unharmed, Franz Ferdinand insisted on continuing his visit. Later, by tragic chance, their driver took a wrong turn and stopped right in front of Gavrilo Princip, who was standing with a pistol. Princip fired 2 shots. One struck Sophie, and the other fatally wounded the Archduke. Within minutes, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire lay dying in his wife's arms. The world did not yet realize it, but those gunshots would echo across continents. Austria-Hungary blamed Serbia, and within weeks, declarations of war began to spread through Europe like wildfire. What could have remained a regional conflict soon dragged in allies, enemies, and empires, transforming a single assassination into the beginning of World War I. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand sent shockwaves across Europe. Austria-Hungary, outraged by the killing, blamed Serbia and demanded harsh punishment. Serbia, however, refused to bow completely, relying on the support of its powerful ally, Russia. What began as a local conflict now threatened to pull in entire nations through a web of alliances that had been built over decades. On July 28, 1914, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. Within days, Russia mobilized its massive army to protect the Serbs' and Slavic interests. This alarmed Germany, which stood firmly behind Austria-Hungary. Germany quickly declared war on Russia, and soon after, on Russia's ally France. Germany's war plan required a swift attack through Belgium to reach France. But Belgium was a neutral country, and its invasion outraged the world. When German troops marched into Belgium in early August, Britain honored its promise to protect Belgian neutrality and declared war on Germany. The dominoes had fallen. In just a matter of weeks, nearly all of Europe was at war. The 2 great camps were now set. The Central Powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and later joined by the Ottoman Empire and Bulgaria. The Allies, France, Russia, Britain, Serbia, and later Italy, Japan, and eventually the United States. Ordinary people watched in disbelief as their leaders sent them marching off to war. Young men, many thinking the fighting would be over by Christmas, lined up to enlist, filled with excitement, patriotism, and fear. But what none of them realized was that this war would not end quickly. The alliances that once promised strength had instead trapped the world in a deadly conflict. The stage was now set for one of the bloodiest wars in history, World War I. By late 1914, the war in Europe had transformed into something no one had imagined. After Germany's attempt to quickly defeat France failed at the Battle of the Marne, both sides dug in. Long lines of trenches stretched from the North Sea all the way down to Switzerland. This became known as the Western Front, a frozen battlefield where movement was rare, but death was constant. Life in the trenches was a nightmare. Soldiers lived knee-deep in mud, surrounded by rats, lice, and the stench of decay. Rain turned the ground into rivers of filth, and winter brought frostbite. Food was scarce, sleep was broken, and danger never left. At any moment, artillery shells could rain down, or enemy soldiers could launch a surprise attack. Battles dragged on for months with little progress. The Battle of Verdun in 1916 lasted nearly a year, where French and German forces fought endlessly, resulting in hundreds of thousands of casualties. That same year, the Battle of the Somme saw the Allies launch a massive offensive, but despite unimaginable losses, over 1 million men, the front barely shifted. New weapons made the killing worse. Machine guns mowed down charging soldiers. Poison gas burned lungs and blinded eyes. Tanks and airplanes appeared for the first time, but they were still in their early stages. The war had turned into an industrial slaughterhouse, where technology advanced faster than strategy. For the men in the trenches, each day was a struggle for survival. Letters from home kept their spirits alive, but hope faded as the months turned into years. The dream of a short war was gone. Now, it was clear, this conflict would drag on until entire nations were broken. Though the heart of the war raged in Europe, its reach soon spread across the globe. This was not just a European conflict anymore, it became a world war, pulling in nations and colonies from every corner of the map. In the Middle East, the Ottoman Empire, allied with Germany and Austria-Hungary, fought fiercely to defend its lands. The famous Gallipoli campaign of 1915 saw British, French, Australian, and New Zealand forces attempt to break through to Constantinople. Under the leadership of young commander Mustafa Kemal, later known as Ataturk, the Ottomans held their ground, inflicting heavy losses and forcing the Allies to withdraw. In Africa and Asia, colonies of Britain, France, and Germany also became battlegrounds. Soldiers from India, Africa, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand were sent thousands of miles away from home to fight in muddy trenches or deserts under burning sun. For many, this was their first encounter with a European war, but their sacrifices would be immense. By 1917, the war was dragging on with no end in sight. Then, a powerful new player entered the conflict, the United States of America. For years, the U.S. had stayed neutral, but Germany's aggressive submarine warfare, which sank American ships, and the infamous Zimmermann telegram, a German plan to push Mexico into attacking the U.S., changed everything. In April 1917, President Woodrow Wilson declared war on Germany, calling it a fight to make the world safe for democracy. Fresh American troops and supplies gave the weary Allies new strength. The war that began with a single assassination had now become a struggle involving nations across Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Americas. The world was fully engulfed in flames, and the end was still far away. By 1917, the war had dragged on for 3 long years, draining nations of their strength. Millions were dead, economies were collapsing, and food shortages spread across Europe. The once proud empires that had entered the war with confidence were now beginning to crack under the unbearable pressure. In the East, Russia was the first to fall. The Russian people, exhausted by years of suffering, turned against Tsar Nicholas II. The Russian Revolution erupted in 1917, toppling the monarchy. The new Bolshevik government, led by Vladimir Lenin, signed the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk with Germany in 1918, pulling Russia out of the war. For Germany, this was a relief, as it meant they could now focus entirely on the Western Front. But even with Russia gone, Germany itself was collapsing from within. Starvation gripped its people due to the British naval blockade, and morale among soldiers crumbled. In 1918, German generals Hindenburg and Ludendorff launched one last desperate offensive, hoping to win before American reinforcements fully arrived. At first, they made gains, but soon the Allies pushed them back with overwhelming force. Meanwhile, Germany's allies were falling apart. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, weakened by internal divisions among its many nationalities, disintegrated as Czechs, Slovaks, Hungarians, and others declared independence. The Ottoman Empire, defeated in the Middle East, surrendered. Bulgaria also laid down arms. Finally, in November 1918, with revolution spreading across its cities and Kaiser Wilhelm II forced to abdicate, Germany asked for peace. On November 11, 1918, the guns fell silent. The war that had begun with such pride and ambition had ended in exhaustion and ruin. The mighty empires of Europe, Austria-Hungary, the Ottomans, Russia, and even Germany, had collapsed, leaving behind a shattered world forever changed. The guns fell silent on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, 1918. Across Europe, soldiers laid down their weapons, and for the first time in 4 years, an uneasy silence replaced the thunder of artillery. The Great War was over, but the scars it left would last for generations. The cost was unimaginable. More than 20 million people were dead, soldiers and civilians alike. Entire towns had been destroyed, and countless families shattered. Vast fields of France and Belgium were reduced to wastelands, littered with craters, trenches, and the remains of the fallen. For those who survived, memories of mud, gas, and loss haunted them forever. In 1919, the leaders of the victorious Allies gathered in Paris to decide the fate of the defeated nations. The result was the Treaty of Versailles. Germany was forced to accept full blame for the war, pay massive reparations, and give up territory. The treaty left Germans humiliated and resentful, sowing seeds of anger that would later be exploited by Adolf Hitler and lead to another devastating conflict. Meanwhile, the map of Europe was redrawn. The once mighty Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Ottoman Empire were carved into smaller nations. New countries like Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia emerged, while Britain and France expanded their influence in the Middle East. The world looked different, but peace was fragile. President Woodrow Wilson's vision of a League of Nations aimed to prevent future wars, but without the United States fully committed, it struggled to keep order. The Great War, once called the War to End All Wars, had instead opened the door to new rivalries, unfinished grievances, and a century defined by conflict. The legacy of World War I was not only in the millions of graves, but in the lessons humanity had yet to learn.